Postmodernism came into fashion early last century and has now become a very influential way of thinking throughout the Western world. And it has a strong emphasis on the importance of diversity or plurality, a view that challenges Christians who believe strongly that the gospel is not just one of many ways, but is the way.
Dr. McGrath is a professor of historical theology and principal of Oxford University's Wycliffe Hall. AWR's Nixon de Vera has a great respect for him and asked him about his views on postmodernism.
Christianity continues to be relevant even in this new era, precisely because the gospel is not something that human beings have invented, but is something that God has given to us, God has entrusted to us. And it means that there is something eternally relevant about the gospel. And the challenge to Christianity in every generation is to find out how best to state the gospel in terms that our culture can understand in order that they may respond to it and discover the full riches of what God wants for us.
Talking with just an ordinary person, what is the difference between how he feels or how he thinks or approach the belief in the past and how the postmodernists approach it today?
I think Christian faith hasn't changed down the years, in that we still believe the same things to be true today as we did in the past. The challenge to us is to try and explain these ideas to a new audience, an audience which perhaps doesn't think in the same way as an earlier generation did. And thus, for example, if I'd been speaking to you 100 years ago, my main concern would have been to show that Christianity is true, and therefore I'd have given you various arguments to show that Christianity made sense. Now, of course, Christianity is true, and that's immensely important. But in this postmodern culture, truth isn't seen as being of great importance. The real issue is attractiveness. And so today, we might want to begin by trying to explain to people why Christianity is so attractive, why it is something that reach out and attract people, bring them into the Christian faith. Of course, it's true as well. Our forebears of 100 years ago were right, absolutely right about that. But that is not the question that's being asked in postmodern culture today. So really what we need to do is listen to the questions our culture is asking and then show how the Christian gospel is able to answer those questions in abundance.
You made a difference between the truth and reality. Could you discuss more on that?
I think it's very important to draw a distinction between something being true and something being real. Because there are many things in life that are true, but don't really seem to have any impact on life whatsoever. For example, the capital of Albania is Tirana. Now, that is absolutely true, but it's not going to change the lives of people. In other words, true, but not necessarily relevant for that reason. The task we face is to show that Christianity, which is true, has a life-changing potential, which of course it does. For the New Testament writers, Christianity turns people's lives inside out and upside down. It makes them born again. It's real. It makes a difference to people's lives. And so the challenge is to show people that we're talking about something that is not simply true, but is relevant, that changes people's lives. And one of the best ways of doing that is simply by talking about our own faith and saying, look, the gospel has taken hold of me. It's changed me. I'm so glad it has. It's something that is real in my life, and it's something that could be real in your life as well.
What challenges does postmodernism present to Christianity?
I think postmodernism presents two major challenges to Christianity. First of all, postmodernism is very relativist. Everybody's saying the same thing. All worldviews are equally valid. It doesn't matter what you believe. As Christians, we've got to counter that. We've got to say that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life, and show why he alone is able to meet the needs of fallen humanity. Secondly, postmodernity is a movement which places great emphasis on truth being not of great importance. In other words, postmodernity is saying truth doesn't really matter. As Christians, we need to challenge that and say it does. You cannot base your life on a lie. You cannot build your house of faith on something that is not a firm foundation. Truth matters, And Christianity is true. It is something that can be relied upon. And even though postmodern culture may not value the idea of truth, for ordinary people it matters. If something is not true, we cannot base our lives upon it.
Do you think that Christianity will survive in this postmodern age?
I think every generation in the history of Christianity has worried about what the next generation will experience. And if you look at the history of Christianity, you can show that every 100 years or so, people began to feel the next generation is not going to be a Christian generation at all. Something terrible is about to happen. Perhaps we feel that way today. What I want to say to people is that we have been here before. We have felt that we've been on the brink of a new era, which would be a very anti-Christian era before. And I think we can take comfort from the past. But above all, we can take enormous courage from the fact that the gospel is not human wisdom, as Paul points out. It is about the power and the wisdom of God. The God who raised Christ from the dead is the God who is with us as we struggle to proclaim and apply the gospel. And we can trust that God. Christianity will survive, not because of us, but because of the power and wisdom of the God who has called us and commissioned us to preach that gospel.
Dr. McGrath sharing his very strong views with Nixon de Vera.